Ooh, fancy graphics. This must mean it's a JD iRacing video. And it is. And something you may notice or take note of is that we're at a place that NASCAR hasn't been back to in quite some time. But it is time to go back. Chicago! Oh yes, we are back in Chicago. Well, at least NASCAR, as far as racing is concerned, is, at least digitally. Hopefully someday it'll come back. Now, you may wonder the reason why Chicagoland left, and that was because of, low attendance and really subpar racing at mile-and-a-half speedways. That is what Chicagoland is. It's a reasonably banked and mile-and-a-half. And for the Gen 5 and the Gen 6 era, you see me wiggling my wheel just trying to get heat in the tires. The Gen 5 and the Gen 6 era, mile-and-a-halves were dreadful. They were boring. They were terrible. Now, NASCAR played around with the powers package, and especially in the Gen 6 era when they put in the high downforce, low power package, where they put only out 550 horsepower, and high downforce basically meant if you got in the lead in the first couple of laps after a green flag, you pretty much had the lead until you either had to pit or a caution came out. So a lot of these racetracks, they were sort of these cookie cutter mile-and-a-halves, and they just flooded the field in some places like Chicagoland that were maybe not the highest of attendance. Kinda got the chopping block. It was unfortunate. Now you're watching me here do my qualifying lap. And I do an okay one. You see me kind of have to lift coming out of there. This track is a bit challenging. And it's challenging even more because this is not the usual fixed setup race that I've done in the past. This is an open setup. And I've got a setup that I've gotten from, I believe it's called OS Racing. They do a bunch of setups for iRacing, both asphalt oval as well as dirt oval and some other things. Now I lay in a 30, and it was okay. So we're gonna come here and we're gonna look at some racing that I did earlier, and just some calamity. You see that car already go into the wall at the beginning. This is a green-white checker at the end of, this was at a fixed race, so it was only 50 laps. You see that car up there gets kind of out of speed there, so we gained 2 spots there just right off the bat. They're right on board here with me just a little bit, and you can see things are getting just a little dicey. A couple cars go up into the wall and spin out. I dive down just to avoid it. Sweet Jesus. Coming to turn 1, this is now the final lap of this race here. And you see some cars getting up into the wall. Oh jeez, I dive down just to try to avoid it. The car tries to chase me down as he's spinning out of control. Get around a car that checked up, and I've gained a ton of spots here. I actually managed to get up into 7th place. And I started in 16th with that green-white checker. Now let's just hop on board. And let's take a look at what all happened there, just from my perspective. Now you may be wondering, well, JD, why am I showing you these? Well, I want to show you mile-and-a-half racing. It's actually pretty fun in these cars. But it's also kind of terrifying with the varying skill levels here. You see, the leader just gets taken out, or he takes himself out. I never really figured out what happened there, but he just went right into the wall. And here we go into turn 1. You see, I'm kind of checking up just a little bit. As I saw him slowing up, he just seemed to be slow there, or maybe got into the wall a little bit. And I'm watching the cars ahead of me. I just want a clean race. So those two decide, nah, we want to go up into the wall together. How sweet. And so I moved forward another couple of spaces. And then those guys get all together. And he kind of just chases me down. I just panic, get down to the apron, get around that car that was checking up. And you know, I probably could have pushed it to get around this red car. And it just was not worth it because he was probably going to put on the defense. I'm happy going from the 16th to 7th in 2 laps. Basically with just good fortune. Now then, I had another race, and this is when I was starting to do the open setup race, so 100 laps. These races are long, and just to give you a little bit of context here, me and that number 7 car were racing back and forth for about 15 laps. Now we pitted about 20 laps ago, so our tires are a bit worn. But I've been saving my tires. He's about the same pace as I am, so I think he was saving his tires about just as much. And just watch, he gets sort of stuffed behind this guy going down low. I see it just in time and I'm able to cut up high. He bumps into the one, tries to come up and goes 3 wide coming up to the line, and I just barely get past both of them to gain 2 extra spots there. Chicagoland is crazy. So let's come to the race that we actually qualified for. And this race, this race was kind of grueling because it's first of all long. The track varies in temperature, so your setup can be kind of different in how it feels based on if it's a 90-degree track or a 95-degree track or 100 degrees or 105. I mean, a temperature swing of just 15 degrees Fahrenheit can really change your setup. Nice deck-lid camera there. See all my chickens on my car? Yes, those racing stripes are in fact chickens, courtesy of my Arms Chicken Farm. But I want to talk a little bit about setup and kind of how you can gauge things a little bit. Now, I am still very new to setups, particularly with next-gen setups. These 7th-gen Cup cars are set up wildly differently than the cars previously, or Xfinity, or trucks. They've got a lot of different settings, particularly in suspension, as well as in your tire pressures are usually the same. They kind of behave the same, lower the pressure, higher grip, higher tire wear kind of thing. And you can also sort of manage your tire heat based on the pressure that you put into them. But there's a lot of different settings and stuff like that that are just a little bit overwhelming. So I had this setup that I got from this website called osracing.net. Good website, decent setups. Hey, they're good enough for me to be able to get something around the track. And I tweak the settings a little bit by just changing a couple of minor settings, sometimes in just doing sort of like a basic equivalent of a track bar adjustment, just slightly to try and maybe loosen them up towards the end of a run or tighten them up towards the end of a run. Typically with these cars, they get loose, particularly at the end of a run. They did at Vegas, they did at Homestead. Oddly enough, with this setup, mine, it was a fine line based on how I drove, whether it would be loose at the end of a run or whether it would be tight, which is actually a pretty good thing. It had some pretty good long run speed. You see, we get the green flag, and the leader got a good jump. He really bolted early. I, on the other hand, get an okay start. As you see, I qualified in the top 10, so not too shabby. At least I think I did. I'm in the top 10 now. And basically, the name of the game here is you're going to run about 50 laps, plus or minus, until you are low on fuel and your tires suck. And it doesn't take long for your tires to suck. After about 10 laps or so, you start really feeling the tire wear. And at the same time, you've got guys all around you, varying speeds, because they have varying different setups and how good they are. And, well, sometimes people just get a little bit overzealous in their moves. And speaking of an overzealous move, actually, nope. I was expecting there to be a caution. I know that there is one coming up. But I think I was just a lap too early. My bad. As you see, I do actually edit these, record them, then I edit again to tweak it to make things look alright. But here we go. You can actually see those two cars that are very close together. Then they end up colliding, and we've got a yellow. Oh no. 3 cars get taken out, and actually a 4th one gets a little bit of contact there. That was dicey. The beginning of these races are always tough because you've got people that are trying to save tires, so they're going to fall back. You have people that are pushing it because they think, I really need to get track position. And sure, they cook their tires later on, but they're going to get up to the front early. So, it could work out. And in this lobby, there were people of all sorts of skill levels too. Sure, it was only a 1500 iRating lobby, not the highest. I was actually doing some 2000, 2200 ones, and was doing okay. Now, you see that little yellow mark pop up. Now, those are cars that are going into the pits. Now, those are the 2 cars that got the worst of it. But you're going to see a couple other cars go into the pits as well. You see that red car going down. Tire wear is really important, and in this race, it wasn't uncommon to have a full green flag race. The track is fairly wide. It actually had a decent amount of grip, and I noticed a lot of cars really weren't slipping and sliding too much through their runs, at least the ones towards the front of the pack. And people were giving each other room. There's a lot of room on this track. Apparently these guys didn't give enough room. Let's take a look back and see what actually happened here. So you're going to watch from my rooftop and see 2 cars get together. And they just then slide up the track, hit the wall hard. I dived down just to avoid it. Fortunately, I get no contact or anything like that. But I can't say the same for the guy that was above me, but let's see what happened with them. You actually see it was either a bit of netcode, or I don't know. Oh man, that hit was hard. I don't know if it was netcode or if it really does model the aero decently, but you can take the air off the back spoiler and have a car lose grip like that. But let's watch from a different angle here. And you see no real contact was made until it kind of just swung across them, and then they just both took each other out. Fortunately, that white car just in the wrong place at the wrong time. A couple other cars getting into each other as they try to avoid. Tough thing. Let's watch on board with that white car number 20. And you just see it just lands right in his lap. Nothing he could do. Heartbreak, especially just a couple of laps in. Alright, we're only on lap 4. And that's not a healthy sounding car. We're going to take a break with a word from our sponsors. Howdy. When you want your chickens come fresh from the farm and bring it to your table for your family to eat,
you want nothing better than Marm's Chicken Farm. Fresh from the farm to your table, nothing but the best to feed your family. That's right, it's Marm's Chicken Farm and JD's Chicken Feed and Tackle. We feed them the best, so they taste the best. Official sponsor, GLR Esports.
Do you like a bit of racing, lads? Do you love a lash of Guinness? Of course you do, every real man does. Now you know it makes sense. Come join GLR for some fantastic racing. And sub here so you don't miss a thing. Come to the lounge and pour yourself a glass of the glorious black stuff we know as Guinness. And know that you're home. GLR Esports.
Hey, you need your trash rummage through. Don't care that the rotten food you tossed is spread all across your yard? Don't mind your bins tipped over randomly? Then you must love raccoons. Get them today. Warning, may have rabies. Do not approach.
Why is this even a commercial?
Official sponsor dumpsters for some reason, and not the official mascot of GLR Esports.
Yeah, because that's such a...
Hey, get out of my editing room!
Welcome back. Yes, that's right. I made a commercial for raccoons. I don't know why, I just thought it was funny. And of course, you know, Marm's Chicken Farm, the usual sponsor. But yeah, I genuinely don't know why I made a raccoon commercial. I just thought it was really funny. I hope you did too. Well, we are lining back up and going green. You notice a few cars did go into the pits. I think some of them are the cars with damage. And there were a couple that did just pick up tires. We get the green flag. And we are back racing. You see there's a couple of cars there in the pits. Still fixing damage and stuff like that. So, like I said, a couple of cars are from that. A couple of those coming out are either on fresh tires or we're just repairing damage. So I don't think it was too much of a strategy call, except for maybe one or two. Now we start to settle into a single file line. I've got this 17 car behind me, I've got this FedEx car ahead of me. And just to show you how close we all are on our setups, we raced together for quite some time. At this point we're getting a little bit of heat back in our tires. And again, it's only lap 10. Based on actually, oh sorry, it was lap 11 into 12. I can't necessarily see the small graphics on my editing screen. But based on the previous races that I've done, pitting is usually going to occur between lap 50 and 60. With that caution, you could stretch it to 60. Fuel window is about 56 laps. That is with just completely open, racing hard the entire time. You could probably fuel save it into 60 if we went full green the entire way. But with that caution, you could probably extend it into maybe lap 62, 63. And my approach in these races was to just kind of let people cycle through a bit, find a window where I was comfortable pitting, and pit then. The draft is kind of negligible in how much it helps around here. You do get a little bit of a speed bonus, but again, you've got to scrub it pretty quick to get into the corners and not, just completely flatten yourself against the wall. The other thing is, you're going to notice that I'm going to be moving around the track a little bit. Now, something I was watching a video about a guy who's an F1 fan reacting to some NASCAR things, and he was kind of confused about the lines that NASCAR drivers take. Now, typically in a corner, say like F1 and GT racing, you usually go from the outside, hit the apex, and come out. Now, even in a lot of ovals, you usually want to go from the outside into the inside line, basically almost against the apron, and then come out. Places like Charlotte, I'd argue Bristol, Martinsville, those places, they do behave that same way. Places like Chicagoland, where they do have a little bit of progressive banking, and at the same time, a very bumpy surface, you can actually get a faster line running in the high line. Now, I'm sort of not quite going down all the way to the bottom. This is to help preserve my tires a little bit. I mean, not just really forcing it down there, but also this is kind of where my car feels comfortable. For a race this long, the fact that I'm going twice the distance what I normally would in these races, it is paramount to preserve the tires and keep the car comfortable, keep it out of the wall. I actually had a heartbreaking race where I was leading by about lap 30. Car was feeling good till all of a sudden it wasn't. I had just driven the car a little bit too hard and just got loose coming out of turn 4, hit the wall, and my race was done. Just snapped loose on me, and it just ruined my day. I mean, I was like, nah, I'm done racing at Chicagoland. Granted, I had done probably about 600 or 700 laps there this week, so I was kind of ready to be done. But it just sucked to have a race that was going really well. I had about a 3-second lead over the guys behind me, started getting loose. Guys behind me started getting closer and closer, got about 2.5 seconds, and that's when I completely bended into the wall, and still eating me up. Now you see that FedEx car has gotten away from me a little bit, but we're settling here into 4th place. Leaders aren't getting too far ahead, which shows me that the setup that I have, while qualifying-wise may not be the best, racing-wise it is feeling pretty good. We're about now 20 laps in, and I'm not falling behind, but I'm also not feeling like I'm pushing the car too hard. Sure, I'm getting a little bit lower on the track, just kind of where the car was feeling quicker. And yes, NASCAR is a lot of technical knowledge, but it is also a feeling with the car. Ooh, you see the FedEx car getting really high there up on the wall. You can see I'm starting to gain on him just ever so slightly. That was a nice FedEx. Ooh, he gets into the wall there. See, I'm going to take him on the inside. Now we move up into 3rd place. That is a very nice FedEx livery. I know at least one of my friends is not a huge Hamlin fan, but Hamlin does have some nice liveries. Purple and blue there, purple and orange, purple and green. All of them are quite nice. Now granted, they are a direct competitor to Whiskey File Logistics, even though Whiskey File Logistics is not a real company. But still. And one of these days I'll make a livery for that. Now we can see if I can reel in the leaders. Now they had some truly good setups. So I don't know if I can quite catch up to them. See the guys behind me, everything's kind of getting spaced out. Sure, that 17 car is going to at least get a little bit of a challenge. He is cutting really deep in the apron. You notice that I'm not. Now, why? How much time do you really save on that? Well, in qualifying times, if you're really pushing the car, you can gain about 0.02, 0.03 seconds by diving down the apron. It is technically a shorter route, and the shortest line is usually the quickest, especially when it's that low of a turning radius on the front stretch. But I don't dive down there for really two important reasons. The first is if I'm on the inside, given that on a computer screen, I thought something happened there. Given that on a computer screen, you don't really have peripheral vision, it's really hard to judge when you're clear of a car and how close they are. So if you're low on the track, they can crowd you out if they really want to. They can keep you pinned on that apron if they really wanted to. It's rude, it's really sort of a faux pas, but they could. And I just don't like putting myself into that situation. So being able to just come down just the line on the apron and then coming off, I feel a little bit safer, especially coming up to the corner. I can control where I'm putting my car. It just feels a little bit better. The second is actually tires. In iRacing, heat is brought into the tires based on how much you're turning the wheel. You know, that friction, that rubbing there is going to cause your tires to heat up, and you want to try and keep them as low a temperature as possible during within the operating temperature, so as not to get too hot where they wear quickly, but not too cold where they lose grip. Typically, you're not going to run into the latter problem. You only really run into that problem during rain races, and they don't do that in iRacing yet. They do it in NASCAR, but they don't do it in iRacing. You see the Black Rifle Coffee Company car challenging me there, but there was actually something in the back. I noticed the FedEx car. We're going to do a little bit side by side. We're going to keep an eye on the battle there. If you look on the right hand side, you see him getting up into the wall just a little bit and slowing up, almost losing the car just a little bit and falling back. That was unfortunate for the 21. So you see the Black Rifle number 5 there was able to get past me. Now the FedEx car, props to him being able to recover, getting back up on my bumper. There's a lot of speed in that Toyota. There's a lot of speed in this Marm's Chicken Farm Ford Mustang too. But there's also a lot of speed in that Camaro, and he is pulling away now. And 30 laps in. 30 plus now. I mean, tires are getting pretty dodgy. And so I'm not quite able to push it as hard as I would like to. He apparently saved his tires pretty well and was able to pull ahead. See, I'm starting to lose the front pack as well. They just have a superior setup, or they're just better drivers. It's probably a mixture of both. I mean, people pay good money for a good setup. The fact that I'm getting mine for free and then just tweaking them based on my own intuition. Well, you get what you pay for. Now, something you'll notice is those two cars that went into the pits. And I think did so strategically. They're slowly moving up the field. I guess just a little bit of that added bonus, where basically they had maybe 5-6 green flag laps fewer than everyone else on the field, it's going to give you a pretty good advantage, even if it's minute. A 10th here, maybe a 100th there. It adds up over the course of a long race. But it's now starting to creep into the back of my mind. Okay, I've got to start getting ready for green flag pit stops. We're about 15 laps away from that window opening. Most of the way through a stint. And I've got this lime green number 17 Toyota just basically locked my bumper. This same group that we were racing in before for the last basically 20, 25 laps. All of us are, and just the parity that's here, even just with the setups themselves, pretty amazing. 17 dives to my inside. Now this is the guy that was very aggressively diving down at the tri-oval portion. Ooh, gets very close to me. I have to check up as he was basically, I got a mixture of loose and was just trying to stay out of his back bumper. End up losing 2 spots there as I relinquish it from the 17. And which one is this guy? I think he's the number 4 here. Sometimes also when you change between dirty air to clean air, it can upset the car just a little bit. I mean, these spoilers here really don't do, and they do a decent amount, but it's not quite enough, compared to say something like an F1 car or something. Check up there to avoid the FedEx car. He kind of gets in the brakes just a little bit earlier than I do. But now I've fallen to the back of this little pack of bars. And that's not really where I want to be. I really don't want to let these cars get away from me, but at the same time, I've just got to pace myself. And you see the 17 is stopped diving down there. I did dive down there. It was mainly because I was messing with my fuel settings and wasn't paying attention. It's very important not to stare at a little tiny screen in your bottom right corner while you're going 180 miles an hour. That's kind of why you don't do the whole texting and driving. My boss texts and drives. It's terrifying. Fortunately, I'm not losing too much time, but that number 4 car is starting to get away from our little pack here. It is descending into a little bit of a trifecta instead of a quadfecta. Sounds like a Thigh Master special. That's a weird image. Enjoy that one. Now you see I am looking to the inside of the number 21. And to be honest, all I'm doing is just really running my line. I didn't want to do that. Mainly because, if we start fighting, we're going to start losing the pack. I end up going a little bit high just because I turned a little bit too late. But I don't want to fight with him and lose the other cars, although it looks like we're going to anyways. Mainly because, yeah, I'm just not... I don't want to fight this early in the race. But he gets up into the wall yet again. I think his car is getting a little bit tight, so I do get around him. 24 is diving down in the pits, maybe trying an undercut, or maybe it's just his car might just not be that great on his tires. Now what's interesting is also the two cars that pitted under the last caution, they've actually started to separate themselves. The first car has gotten up into 10th place, while the second car is in 14th. That advantage may not be benefiting him as much as he would have liked. 24 seems to be getting out of the pits now. And it does look like green flag pit stops are slowly starting. It looks like the 24, which is just coming out of the pits now, is 3 laps behind now after his stop. We have another car that I believe was actually trying to do a 2-stop strategy, if I remember the radio calls right. He's about a lap behind. He's probably the next highest car there on the pit stops. A lot of different strategies, but the strategy that seemed to be the best from what I was seeing was single pit stop at about the halfway point. You see the gap that is built up to that green number 17, and the gap that I've built up on the FedEx car behind me. As we reach the end of the run, it really shows me that, you know, my car is stronger than FedEx certainly, but it is, there is a little bit lacking. And you know, if this was earlier in the week, I would really try and play around with this more. I pretty much took it to its logical end. I want to think this race was Thursday, maybe Friday. Yeah, it had to be Friday. You can see me really kind of cranking on the wheel there. It's starting to get a little bit tight coming out of those corners. And you see the difference that tires make. That right there is our lapped friend. Now coming fresh out of the pits, you can lay down a pretty decent time. You see the fastest times here, all in the 31s and 30s. Right now, I'm probably doing about 33, so a 1.5 to 2 second time difference is huge. The fact that he's getting kind of stuck behind me makes me wonder if either A, his setup is really poor, or B, he has damage. Because option number C of him being patient, racers don't know how to be patient. Well, at least not that well. Certainly not the patience of dealing with a car with 50 laps worth of tire wear. He is in the top 5, but still, I'd just move right around him if I were him. you see the cars around me, at least the cars behind me there, are going into the pits. The FedEx car did go in. And this is the point where, in hindsight, I think I should have gone in. Now, 4th place there, well, now 4th place, 5th place is in the pits. I believe he was the leader. I arguably should have pit a few laps earlier than I did. See, my car kind of snapped loose there. It's because the 24 was coming to my outside, and I was just kind of letting him by. He's not going to quite get the move. Oh, there he goes. Now he gets the move done. I arguably should have pit. Probably about lap 52. And it's mainly because the amount of time that I'm losing staying out on these old tires, it starts to add up. I'm adding about 2 to 3 seconds per lap to this race every time I'm going around from this point onward. And it's actually a detriment to my strategy overall. As you see now, I've got the black rifle car coming up on me. He is on fresh tires, and he just moves around me so effortlessly. But I am in first, and this is adding to the amount of laps led overall in my stats. But I am getting passed by lapped cars who are on fresher tires. Now, will this benefit me later on? We will see, because that's what I'm kind of banking on. My car is comfortable. Yeah, it's snapping a little bit loose here and there. But what if the extra 3 to 4 laps could help my car perform better? We shall see. But I do start to enter into the pits. Green flag pit stops are hard because you've got to take a car going 150, 160 miles an hour in those corners down to 50 miles an hour onto pit road, and it is a long pit road. Now, something that you also have to keep in mind when you're going to the pits is that your braking distance is actually a little bit further than you think because the tires are worn. But I get into my pits, I actually do stop right on the dime. Number 3 crew changes the right-hand tires. Now changing the left hand. Now, something that's interesting about these cars is this is the first year in the first car to use a single lug nut. And that actually shortened the pit stop times considerably in the real world NASCAR. It didn't quite translate perfectly into iRacing, but it did improve sometimes. And what it did was, because, well, now a 4-tire stop, you actually have to wait on fuel, and there's actually been issues of people taking the fuel cans out of the pits and stuff like that. There's been issues of loose wheels because, you know, they either strip the nut on the wheel or they don't get it tight enough. And there are stiff penalties for that. It is a 4-race suspension for your crew chief. Also a suspension for that tire operator. And then I think it's also a fine. It's crazy. I actually think NASCAR is kind of missing the point on particularly the latter part. You shouldn't suspend the guy because then you're getting a second-rate guy in his place. And sure, he needs time to learn too, but eh. Now, as I am from the future, we still need to take a word from our sponsors, so we are going to go side by side.
Do you suck at racing? Are you down by 5 laps in a 4-lap race? Want to get good? Come to Cassian Racers School for kids who can't drive good and want to do other stuff good too.
Get good, son. Official racing school of GLR Esports.
Well, that was awkward. Want to get out of here? Take a flight with the Whiskey File Spirit Airlines. Not actually affiliated with Spirit Airlines, just simply a joke about whiskey. We give you comfier seats, more legroom, and we offer full beverage services on all of our flights, including select whiskeys from my private collection. Let's get away. Whiskey File Spirit Airlines.
It's over like, oh God, here it goes. I'm gonna start feeling from my head to my toes. You said some shit that I can't let go, so just stay tuned for the rest of the show.
Welcome back. Not that we really left because I got fancier with my products, even did a side-by-side like I'm legitimate. Now I did say, it's like I'm a fortune teller. It's mainly because I know this race is going green for quite some time. Now I also wanted to advertise there for the Mono a Mono League. It is a GT7 league, so feel free to join. I've got a Discord link down there. You can see all the details to it. It's going to be fun, and we look forward to having you. Now we're getting around some of the earlier traffic. We're starting to move back up through the field, but nothing really exciting was happening there, so that was a good point to take a break. That's actually the number 4. We were battling him quite a bit earlier. Interesting as things kind of shook out that we were basically right on top of each other. Yeah, on to my point about the penalties. And some of them were kind of just harsh and really punished the team even further than it needed to. But, hopefully they'll figure out the lug nut situation and they'll be better for 2023. We can only hope. I don't like saying loose wheels. Now we are catching back up to the FedEx car. And basically our little group is back together again. But this time we have a friend. See the red Goodwrench Budweiser car there. We quickly dispatch of him, both me and the FedEx car. Number 4 behind us is hopefully going to try and follow in suit. Now, NASCAR does not officially have a blue flag rule. In, say, like GT racing, there is, especially if you're the leader coming up on lapped cars or you are in a class higher, a blue flag to warn the car ahead that fast cars coming up from behind is kind of important. Here, you rely on your spotter telling you, and you can block. There is no penalty against it. The only times that they ever really penalize for blocking is if there's true conspiracy to slow for points reasons. That actually did happen at the Charlotte Roval. I believe that got appealed, but there was an incident where, basically there's a clause in NASCAR that says that you have to drive at 100% of your ability. Now, there's a lot of wiggle room in that, but pretty much they just want you to drive all out and not, intentionally slow someone up just for points reasons. Especially with the way that the playoff format is, which is just ludicrous in and of itself. I don't know if you paid attention to the NASCAR playoff season, but basically what it is you've got 26 races that are considered the regular season. And they've got a regular allotment of points and whatnot. But if you win, you get a spot in the playoffs. Up until the point where there are 16 drivers that have won. If a 17th driver wins, then it becomes a points battle between those who have won. Then when you go into the playoffs section, it is, I believe, 10 races. So I don't think it's 3 races per round, and then then a final one in Phoenix. And it is you win and you're in, and then you points your way in there, and the points kind of reset at the end of each stage. It's kind of ridiculous. But what it does do is it creates the environment for moves of desperation. Because now you can kind of play around with things, with teams and whatnot, to try and get your driver up front. So that's how you had cars blocking others for playoff reasons. That's how you had Ross Chastain doing the Hail Melon around Martinsville to points his way in to pass Hamlin and take the final spot in the championship. Or at least the championship 4. Basically, those 4 were the only ones that were able to compete for the championship. The rest of them are out. Now, the way that it used to be done in the Winston Cup era, so this whole chase format started in a certain form in 2004. But before that, it was simply a points battle. The most consistent and fastest driver through the year won. And I'm of the ilk that prefers this. I like the Winston Cup era. Sure, you don't get the craziness of a championship battle if someone really runs away with it, but with how much parity are in these cars these days, I don't know if you really need it. See, back in like Richard Petty's days, when he was racking up dozens of wins a season, and he had superior equipment, he was maybe racing against 3-4 other drivers each week. The rest of them, they were just there for show. In Dale Earnhardt's days, it was maybe 5 or 6, and Jeff Gordon's days, maybe 8 or 9. By the time it came to this era, we had, 15 winners? 16 winners? I mean, Ryan Blaney, I think, actually lost. No, Ryan Blaney was the only one competing for a championship. who didn't have a win. It was crazy. A bunch of drivers you wouldn't expect actually picked up wins. I mean, Ross Chastain being a championship contender when a couple years back, when he was at Spire Motorsports, he was looking at not even having a ride. Just because they couldn't afford it. It's nuts. This car has really leveled the playing field. Now you see I'm really racing the number 17 kind of hard here. And to be honest, I don't want to. Arguably I should have hopped on the horn and told him, hey, I'm not really trying to pass you. But he eventually lets me by. But he's gonna try the old switcheroo. No. But I was actually kind of content staying behind him, but I had a pretty quick car. So I get around him and see if we can run down 4th place here. Now, you may ask yourself, how does tire saving in the Xfinity Series or the Truck Series compare to the Cup Series? And a lot of the techniques are kind of the same, it's just the tires that wear are kind of different sometimes. Depending on the track and how you have your setup done and how you drive it, you can either wear the right front or the left rear. And you may wonder, how do you wear the left rear? You can also wear the right rear out too, but I've noticed in a lot of races, the left rear really does wear out. And the car seems to really drive in the middle of the corners and out of the corners on that left side tire. And you can, if you wear out that back end, that's when you start seeing cars sort of fishtailing it out. So you really want to make sure that these cars are a little bit tighter towards the end of the runs to keep yourself from running into those issues. And the way you can adjust that in the car, and this is actually something I'm actively doing, is brake balance. Now if you have a setup that you know and you can kind of predict about where it's going to be, you can adjust your brake balance in the race. And you can also do this in the fixed series as well, because brake balance is one of the things that you can adjust even with a fixed setup. In fixed setups, I think it's 3 things that you can really adjust. Actually, I don't know in the Cup cars. There's actually a couple more things, but you can usually adjust your steering, your offset, and your brake balance. I think with these you can also mess with the brake master cylinders and couple other things. But while you're racing, if you notice that your car is getting tight to a corner, and it has to be, you have to kind of jump on it early to really get the most benefit out of it. But if you notice that you're getting a little bit tight in the corners, move your brake balance back a bit. That'll put a little bit more strain on the tires in the rear and give the front tires a little bit more of a rest. It'll help cool them down a little bit, help heat up the rear tires a little bit, give them a little bit more grip. And it'll wear out the back end just a little bit. That'll help kind of balance the car out, and the car will feel fine for a little bit. Then maybe about 5 or 6 laps later, you'll need to make an adjustment again. And what's cool is, as long as you have it set up on your wheel or keyboards close by, you can adjust that on the fly and not really think about it too much. Just a couple clicks forward, a couple clicks back, and you're good. Now we're coming to 15 to go. We are starting to get into the final part of this race. This is really where you need to start pushing to pass cars if you're in a position to do so. Now at the moment, I've got about a second to the car ahead of me, and I believe he is a lapped car. Yep, it is the number 24. And I do want to get around him quickly because he is been sort of an obstacle, to put it nicely. Now, a nice obstacle. He has gotten out of the way sometimes, but see right here, I get underneath him, but it compromises my exit, which means the car behind me is going to gain on me if he sets it up just right. Now it is about a second and a half or so to the car ahead of me. Now that is quite a distance, but it is achievable. Now if you're wondering, the interval to the left side of the bar there is between car to car, and the intervals on the right are the intervals from your car to the leader. So my interval there is the car to car ahead, and so on and so forth. Now I am starting to reel him in, and I'm aware of this, and so I'm really trying to push. Hopefully I can keep the 17 behind me. And we hope that there aren't really any cautions. Spoiler, this race is gonna go green. Now we're catching up to this lapped car, the number 8, and he is a little bit in the way. Fortunately, a lot of what I've noticed with these lapped cars is they prefer the high line. It's a safer bet if your car is a little tighter, but it is also a little dangerous because you get up to the wall. But I get around him pretty quickly. Fortunately, he does not drive like the driver that his car is based off of. I think that is that Tyler Reddick's paint scheme? Fairly certain. Some of the new guys I'm a little fuzzy on. I'm an old school NASCAR driver, or NASCAR fan. I started, I guess, not really that old school, but old school enough. I mean, I started watching as early as I can remember. Back in the early Gen 4 days. That was, I think it was 93, I remember very, very loosely. I at least did have the number 1 Baby Ruth Jeff Gordon car. It was pretty cool. But I do remember being very young watching his official rookie season. I unfortunately don't remember his first race against Petty, which was Petty's last race. I was alive, but I don't remember it. Oh, how far this sport has come. Yeah, none of the drivers of my childhood are really racing anymore. I think Kurt Busch and Kevin Harvick, probably the only two from when I was, young enough. Yeah, I was a child at that point. Now you see we're catching up to more lapped cars. We are catching this tied car, but he is yet another lapped car. We're not really gaining on the actual position car. Which is a little unfortunate. Now, if you're wondering why the positions are suddenly changing, the car in front is blinking a bit, so that is the reason why you're seeing those jumps. But I am still in 5th. Still trying to run down the car in 4th, but he is gaining time now on me. Now 1.8, 1.9 seconds. And I've got this 17 to worry about behind me. looking at it, 5 laps to go. I've just got to sort of keep my head down, keep racing my line, keep the car underneath me. Just avoid making any mistakes. At 17, he is hungry. He is wanting that position. He wants to take 5th away from me, put me into Super GT's favorite spot, but I don't want to. You see him dive down to the apron, almost clipping the grass. Not really gaining too much. There's diminishing return on that apron, where it does wear the tires down. And you do have the potential of spinning, less so on this track than others. You see he had a pretty good run out of that corner. He is getting so close to the interval, not really even able to process it. Now he is side by side on me. He is now taking the position. I'm going to take the inside here. And I keep the position. We both get a little bit loose coming out of that corner. Mainly me trying to check up, trying not to block him, and him just getting loose. He is going to try again. 24 is entering the party here too. Keep in mind he is a lapped car, but he's quick. At least quick enough. And so he is going to be a bit of an obstacle to both me and to the 17. So now enter turn 3. The white flag is in the air for the leader. 24 is going to get around me. He does have slightly fresher tires, but he is a few laps behind, but he will be a decent drafting partner, at least for a little bit. Now we come through the final turn and we take the checkered flag. He dives down, tries to make a Hail Mary move there, but just doesn't quite have the distance there. What a race. Long race. But a fun one nonetheless. You see a car going through the grass there. Me, I was tired after this race. These 100 lap races, man, they buzz my hands. I told 17, you know, good racing, had fun there. And now we take this onto the pits, and I think we're gonna wrap this one up. This was a long video, but you know, like, subscribe, comment, share, all the YouTubey things. We do races in GT7, we do races in iRacing, no, I do racing in iRacing, and we do races in ACC. I also do funny commercials. We do all sorts of things, so feel free to join us down in the Discord. Join in the mono league. We've got a handful of open spots there, so we got a lot going on, but we bid thee adieu. Have a good night.